First of all, I'm going to lead with whenever you get an introduction to talk about the big idea and it's TED style, I feel like an imposter. And what I'm really hoping today is that a few small ideas with maybe a challenge at the end equals a big idea or a TED idea. And we'll see. And we've had the advantage and the inspiration over the last several hours of really getting to see Tulane, Javier, Lynn, just really hear about the essence of consciousness. And before I go too far into that, I can remember when my lanyard was orange and I was invited for the first time more than a decade ago. I sat in the couch in the middle of the room next to Doug. It was very intimidating for me. We're about 50 employees at the time and 9.8 million in revenue. I was inspired by Raj, inspired by Kip, inspired by John Mackey, and inspired by my friends who had invited me. And it changed the trajectory of where our business went and how it took off. And we're a real story because at that time, like I said, we're under 10 million, we're under 50 employees. And today we're international, we're more than 1,500 employees. And we've been on the Inc. 500 or 5,000 list 14 times. And I found out, this is where I feel like the imposter. I don't say that, but that's pretty rare 14 times. Like I think less than 14 out of more than 100,000 companies. And I wonder what it was that enabled us to do that. And first of all, before I say any more, it was the collective of our company. One of our core values is involvement, and our success is a consequence of the collective involvement of the people at our company. And so I'm here today in a large part because of all those people, and it grounds me each and every day. You're going to see some slides today about what a business can do, but also about what I've learned along the way. And I've learned some very important lessons here, like very, very important lessons. And it's easy to be energized. I already mentioned going through this, we have a lot of recognitions. I'm most proud of probably the middle one where we've been named more than 100 times the best places of work. We can prove how successful businesses can integrate with creating conscious culture, elevating leadership throughout not only our organization, but hopefully inspiring others out there. I'm going to use the slides from the deck because it is from the Conscious Capitalism deck about what conscious capitalism is, but I got the sense of this the first time I was in this room. These 4 tenets of higher purpose, stakeholder orientation, conscious culture, and conscious leadership. And I was so inspired. I had so many ideas coming out of here. Our purpose actually at a company shifted from simply survive, which that was the real purpose before that, to one that has industry meaning. When we look at this, higher purpose can take all sorts of forms. Again, this is what you would have seen maybe in Raj's, or if you get it from the website. There are some that include DEI. You might have some that are health, community, education, poverty. These are all extremely worthy purposes. But I failed to at one time, and this is where my first lesson came in, I emphasized that consciousness with almost a disregard for the purpose of business. It's a purpose beyond making profit. If we as an organization wanted to impact our entire industry, and that's a big industry in technology services, I had to be reminded, the further I got from an integration of consciousness and capitalism, the more I put my opportunity to live into purpose. Because profit is the air, as you've heard the metaphor, that businesses bring or breathe. And it's very, very dangerous for us to forget that. And so the lesson here is to be a champion of free market capitalism while living in to your purpose, while supporting your stakeholders. When we forget that business innately is built upon providing value to customers, we endanger these things. And also remembering and having the courage to remember, especially in today's day and age, that reward is not an entitlement. There are ties to work ethic and taking risk and creativity and creating value in an organization. The next tenet is our stakeholder models. And again, a lot of you have these. Some of you may or may not think about them too often. I would encourage you to do so. But one thing that I learned, again, very similar to purpose, is the size of our organization played into the ability for us to spread our attention. When we were small, if I started to think about all the stakeholders that we could impact, and I had great ambition, it was one of the challenges that I faced. It was too much. I think the 4 disciplines of execution talk about we can really only focus on 3 to 5 major objectives organizationally, big rocks at any given time. If I take all of that focus and I put it across 20, you're almost doomed to fail. And we ran into this a few times, which again jeopardized our business. And I learned something. I learned not to try to be everything to everyone. And for somebody whose love language is words of affirmation, that's hard, and this is true. I would say some of my own shadows, shame, guilt, it is just the undeniable desire to be accepted, because as a child, I was not accepted. And for me then, to try to prioritize one stakeholder over another was a very difficult thing. But given the size, it actually allowed me to focus and to provide real value to those stakeholders. If you're a smaller organization or a mid-sized organization like ours, it is okay to prioritize. And when it comes to stakeholders, and I'm carefully wording this, a sub-lesson is that misdirected activism is often toxic within an organization. I personally value harmony over my own personal opinions on almost any subject. Because if we are going to make a difference as a movement, as an organization, we need to come together. You'll hear from Rand tomorrow about a big tent. And what a big tent means is accepting perspectives that are not your own, welcoming them and influencing them. Conscious culture, we see a lot of things here, trust and caring. And I'm going to flip through this. This is our ecosystem, purpose and stakeholder models, building trust with our stakeholders, our identity, what our employees can expect of the company. This is how we come together on an annualized basis. My point here, this is complex, and this was not developed in one idea session. These are pervasive values and programs that have developed over a decade, and now they are pervasive. Our trust pods, 70% of the employees participate in discussions on those 13 behaviors of trust voluntarily. And the biggest stakeholder winner of that we found through our surveys is the families and friends as a stakeholder, because they've learned to establish trust through those behaviors. But the big lesson, my ideas were always bigger, and I loved than we could accomplish in a year. But I started small on every single one of these, very, very small. And we remained very deliberate and relentless. And those are key. And tomorrow, I am facilitating a workshop around not just culture, but starting small, very tactically, remaining deliberate, and remaining relentless so that we can do these things together. You hear about conscious leadership. These are the common, or many of the common attributes of conscious leaders that are proposed by the CCI organization, and these are really good, right? Empathetic, long-term oriented, self-aware, which is one of the forms of consciousness. But there's something here that seems to be missing, and I don't want to forget. Just like when we mentioned consciousness in capitalism, there is an urgency, there might be a tendency, a temptation to forget about capitalism. There's the same thing here. There's the urgency to forget about leadership. We have models that differentiate in improving between management and leadership. Another talk, another time. Not everybody is a leader. And that's a good thing if you think about it. But all leaders tend to have a few of these attributes that we found. Their ability to inspire, they have a sense of confidence about them, and a sense of initiative with discernment. So the lesson on this pillar is to focus on leadership as much as consciousness. Don't confuse that just because we've been given a position of authority, that means true leadership. And something that I try to remind our executives are that leaders often they rely on inspiration. And as I wrap this up, this is more for the community and the challenge. You heard about some of the challenges that we faced in more of this traditional or classic model of capitalism. And maybe I'm a positivist, or I hadn't heard that before, but I believe, and I think we all need to remember, that capitalism is the force of good in this world. And it has done a tremendous amount of good, even in its current state. But it's not enough, and I'm not suggesting we stop there, because I don't believe we should stop there. There is room for us to evolve, and we've already started to see this in stakeholder capitalism. And while classic capitalism has its own shadows of greed, we heard about possible, maybe oppression in it. We need to shed light on the good aspects of capitalism. We need to not accept the shadows. As with the emergence of stakeholder, that is not accepting some of the shadows of classic capitalism. But it has its own shadows. It deploys the stakeholder model as a form of governance. As a reminder, that takes away freedom. And freedom's a very compelling human natural choice. It has a shadow of literally trying to attack the foundation that it is built upon. And instead, the challenge here, I think, for all of us is, how do we elevate this? How do we not pit stakeholder capitalism against classic capitalism, but how do we join these two things together? How do we integrate consciousness with capitalism, not choose between the two? Thank you all. I appreciate the time very much.